Chernobyl, the most radioactive site in the world. A toxic wasteland. Now, for the very first time, 2 scientists have been granted exclusive access to investigate the entire zone. Risking potentially lethal radiation, their mission is to find out what 30 years of nuclear fallout has done to life here. Anthropologist Marianne O'Hara and biologist Rob Nelson will journey deep into unexplored areas, completing the most thorough investigation ever carried out.
That is wholesale damage.
They conduct scientific experiments.
Of course, it's aggressive.
Searching for answers to unusual behaviors and mutations.
Something out there.
Racing against mounting radiation exposure, they uncover the shocking truth about the people and animals that still live here, where nothing was expected to survive for years to come. April 1986. A catastrophic explosion at Chernobyl nuclear power station. Reactor number 4 goes into meltdown, releasing 8 tons of highly radioactive core material. Radiation equivalent to 400 Hiroshima bombs, 5 times more than the Fukushima disaster, reigns across the world. Thousands of people die, and countless animals are wiped out. 30 years later, it's so radioactive that it is still abandoned, sealed off. A 20-mile exclusion zone with access strictly controlled.
I think I see the checkpoint in front of us.
Yeah.
After the disaster, many thought life here would be gone forever. But new studies are challenging that belief. Anthropologist Marianne O'Hara and biologist Rob Nelson are here to find out the truth.
This whole area is like a giant experiment because you're looking at, plants and animals that have been living with radiation their entire lives. And so looking at them, studying them, you're able to figure out what are the real effects of radiation.
Yeah. A lot of my friends think I'm absolutely mad to be here. Why would you take that risk? And yet there's so much science that needs to be done here.
How can life survive in this extreme environment? And what is the radiation doing to the creatures here?
So we've got people working here, some people down here. So we've got people all over this area doing different things, trying to look at how radiation is affecting the wildlife here.
We've got a lot to see.
Yeah. All right, let's get started.
There are local tales of monster fish, 2-headed frogs, mutant creatures. But what's really out there in Chernobyl's danger zone?
Gas, gas, gas! 1, 2, 3.
The threat of the invisible killer is everywhere. So before they start, they need military-grade training and protective gear.
Look at me. Too late. You've done it. Too late. You are where you are. Okay? Okay, down here.
I cannot believe that I'm going into the heart of a nuclear hot zone. I remember as a little kid being kept in at school break time so that the contaminated dust wouldn't fall on us. I remember it so clearly.
Well, it's far worse here. Right.
Thank
Over
you.
boots.
Okay.
To help protect your feet. Oronasal mask to help you protect your breathing. Goggles and your protective oversuit.
No one's done that much exploration into the zone. Even decades later, these places are so contaminated that if you stay too long, it could kill you.
Marianne and Rob have been briefed on the symptoms to watch out for. Acute exposure to radiation causes sickness, dizziness, hair loss, vomiting blood, and even seizures. But with few studies, the effects of long-term radiation are much less understood.
What we want to find out is what 30 years of radioactive fallout has done to life here.
They start in a cooler part of the zone, where radiation levels are relatively low. A top-secret relic of the Cold War.
You see all these trees around here? They were basically planted to grow up and hide this array so that nobody could see it from any road.
This was a super-powered radar facility, designed by the Soviets to spy on the West.
This whole area was super secret. Nobody was allowed in here. It was protected for a long time.
Undisturbed by humans, this used to be a haven for wildlife. But that was before the nuclear meltdown that exterminated animals across the entire region.
Okay, let's see what we've got then. Oh, hello.
We've only been here just a little time, but I've already heard a woodpecker over there.
What they find surprises them. It's teeming with wildlife.
This is awesome.
Against all odds, nature appears to be making a comeback. But how? Could radiation be affecting the animals in ways that aren't easily visible? Time to do more detailed investigation.
I've just spotted a herd of Przewalski's horses, incredibly endangered, and they're grazing just over there.
These are the zone's rarest creatures, rescued from the brink of extinction.
It is amazing to get this close to these horses. The Przewalski's horse is actually a totally different species to the domestic horse that most of us are familiar with. And they're really primitive. They think that the species diverged at least 50,000 years ago. And that is basically why they look like cave painting horses. They're a primitive species.
The horses were introduced 12 years after the explosion. They were settled in the low radiation areas of the zone with the hope that the protected site would allow them to thrive. At first, all looked promising.
By the early 2000s, they were doing incredibly well. This was a conservation success story. But just recently, numbers have been dropping rapidly, and no one's quite sure why. So I'm going to try and get a little bit closer, check out how healthy this herd is.
The horses appear completely normal, but now something is killing them off. To find out what is going on, Marianne is going to collect a test sample.
I've got to fill this whole thing up with horse doo-doo.
This dung sample should reveal whether it's disease or radiation, which is having such a catastrophic effect on the horses. Professor Tim Mousseau, a biologist from the University of South Carolina, has been studying a range of animals across the zone for 15 years.
Tim, hi.
Marianne, so nice to meet you.
How's it going?
Nothing is allowed to leave the exclusion area. So Professor Mousseau has set up a lab inside an abandoned building in the zone.
Welcome to our humble abode.
Thank you very much. Tim, that's it. The gamma spectrometer, look at that. Solid lead blocks held together with duct tape.
Yes.
Okay, here's the sample.
The spectrometer measures the radiation in the dung.
Well, let's see what we get.
Wow.
Look at that. We have a...
That's a huge signature. What's happening there? That is going up and up and up.
Yeah, no, this is quite incredible.
And we've got that blue spike, CS137. That's the radioactive cesium.
That's the radioactive cesium that's dominant in the Chernobyl zone, yep.
Even though these horses are in the cool radiation zones, the contamination in their bodies is extremely high.
And that is going to have profound impact on those horses' health. That is wholesale damage.
I'm really, really shocked, actually.
Well, those results were staggering. That dung sample was taken from a cold area of the exclusion zone, but the cesium-137 levels were through the roof.
Over time, the low-level radiation is building up in the horses' bodies to toxic amounts. And that could be what's causing the horse population numbers to drop. Coming up, Rob is about to investigate a mysterious change in one of Chernobyl's iconic animals, the wolves. Biologist Rob Nelson and anthropologist Marianne Ohata are trying to find out what extreme nuclear radiation has done to living creatures around Chernobyl. Rob is on the trail of a strange change in the growing wolf population.
Wolves have had reports of being pretty aggressive. And wolves are not really aggressive. Wolves are very intelligent. They try to stay away from people. But we're dealing with something that's a little bit different here. You know, we're dealing with wolves that have been exposed to radioactivity.
Rob teams up with wolf expert Marina Shinkviria, who's been studying the wolves here for over 10 years. She reveals an alarming piece of information.
Yes, we had one accident with people, attack to human, I mean.
So the wolves here have been eating some livestock, dogs, and there was an attack on humans.
Only one case.
A group of temporary workers were in the zone when suddenly a lone wolf attacked them, biting them repeatedly. 6 people were taken to the hospital for stitches and rabies treatment. Wolf attacks on humans are exceptionally rare, especially on a group of people.
I'm just thinking back to when I grew up. I heard that wolves never attacked humans.
This could be just an isolated case, but the locals here fear that radiation is changing the wolves' behavior. Rob wants to set up camera traps to see the wolves in action. But they often hunt after dark, which means Rob has to go into the forest of the Chernobyl exclusion zone at night.
Almost 9 o'clock at night right now. We haven't passed anybody in a while. This forest at night, it's a lot easier to believe the stories of mutant animals. We're hoping we can get close enough to see these wolves through these camera traps, because we want to be able to see what their behavior's like.
These camera traps capture an image whenever an animal breaks the beam. But Rob will need to see much more than a passing glimpse of a wolf. He will need to capture behavior that's never been seen on camera before.
This is my chance to see if the wolves really are behaving strangely. If so, this will be the first time that something like this will be documented.
Suddenly, they hear something.
Shh.
You see? You see?
What was that?
It's a very, very low sound, like a fragment of a hole in very far distance from wolves.
Marina has a plan.
She said she's gonna do something real quick. I think she's gonna try to call him in.
Actually answer.
Hoping they've lured the wolves closer to the traps, they decide to call it a night.
Let's leave the camera traps, leave them for a couple days, and see where we get.
This is a good idea.
Coming up, Marianne comes face to face
Oh my God.
with a killer. Anthropologist Mariana Hata and biologist Rob Nelson are working in Chernobyl, the most radioactive site on the planet, to find out what extreme radiation has done to life here.
We're staying the night in the exclusion zone in Chernobyl town. Someone just ran in while we were having dinner and said, there's a wild boar in the car park. And it's here, just totally unbothered. Boy, it's massive. I have to say, I'm kind of lost for words. It's so close. And that weighs more than I do. And I know that wild boar kill people. They gore them and, oh my God.
Across the zone, the number of wild boar has soared.
I think it's eating some kind of nut from the tree that's above us. It's got an incredibly hard shell and this boar is just crunching through them. Just goes to show just how powerful their jaws are. And that's one of the reasons they're so dangerous.
The other danger is hidden. These boars are radioactive. They eat the zone's toxic plants, concentrating the poison in their bodies. And when they roam outside the zone, They are hunted and eaten by the locals.
You can see this is how boars feed. They get their noses right down into the dirt, grubbing up roots, eating mushrooms, berries, and that's why they're so susceptible to getting contaminated. If you eat wild boar, you're ingesting everything that animal has taken in. Makes the meat really dangerous.
But who hunts these animals? And why would they want to eat the toxic meat? The next morning, Marianne discovers some startling information. Despite armed perimeter checkpoints in Chernobyl, she's heard some former residents have sneaked back in and now live here permanently. As an anthropologist, Marianne is eager to learn more. She's determined to track the people down.
I feel like a spy from long-gone Soviet days because I've had to arrange this rather clandestine meeting with someone who knows about people who live in the exclusion zone. The authorities are aware that people come in here, but they're not really keen on me talking to them.
Ivan works legally in the zone at the local fire station. He's agreed to take Marianne to meet 2 permanent residents.
Ivan Ivanovich, Marianne.
Marianne.
Здравствуйте.
Тоже Marianne.
So you live here permanently?
Ivan and Maria came back to Chernobyl just 2 years after the meltdown.
50 years? So you remember when the disaster happened?
Ще саме сіяли осадьбі, так вона тоді того.
Ivan Ivanovich says he remembers exactly the moment the disaster happened. They were planting vegetables and suddenly the evacuation had to happen. They were told they had to leave their home.
But why would they want to return to this deserted, radioactive village?
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. They thought that you were tainted. When they were evacuated, the area that they were resettled to, the people thought that they were tainted, contaminated by Chernobyl. So when they went to the shop, everyone else would disappear.
Treated as outcasts outside Chernobyl, they preferred nuclear fallout to isolation.
От так ми живемо.
Aha, these are carrots.
There are no shops here, so this couple live mainly on what they can grow on the land.
Carrots, corn, peas. Were you ever worried about the contamination in the ground?
Так ми не хвилювались, ми прежде чим подивитися, так ми
He says that the liquidators, the clean-up workers came here and reported that the land was clean enough for people to live.
But radiation is virtually impossible to eradicate completely. And even low-level radiation can build up to dangerous levels within the animals and plants.
It's warm in here. It's nice.
Having to survive on what they grow or find in the zone could be putting Ivan and Maria in danger.
It's clearly a hard life these two live.
Ivan and Maria are not the only residents. It's estimated that over 150 people are now living in this toxic wasteland.
Discovering that people live here permanently is an absolute game changer. We need to understand the consequences of long-term radiation exposure, not just for the sake of the animals, but for the sake of the people.
It's been 24 hours since biologist Rob Nelson and wolf expert Marina Shrikvia set camera traps to try and capture wild behavior of Chernobyl's wolves.
Pretty cool. Wow. Wait, is that a male right there?
Remarkably, the footage shows a wolf eating its prey, a unique chance to observe its behavior.
Tell me what you can about the behavior here of this wolf eating.
You can see that it's eating, but it's like angry, yes? Maybe something is disturbing it. You can see, yes? It looks on another side.
You can see right there he's growling.
Fangs.
Yeah, he's definitely being aggressive right there to something. You can see his fangs.
Of course, it's aggressive.
All right, I must say it's a little bit scary seeing that aggressive behavior in the wolves. At the same time, we're really lucky to have seen it because it's really, really rare to see something like that in the wild. I'm not exactly sure what the wolf was looking at. Just from that picture, it's really hard to tell. So the scientists are going to continue their research. They're going to take DNA samples, try to figure out what's going on with these radioactive wolves.
Rob and Marianne are about to face their biggest challenge yet. They are moving into the highest radiation areas, investigating one of the zone's most lethal spots.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Stay safe, Rob.
Chernobyl's infamous Red Forest. This hot zone has never been fully explored before.
You get nervous?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. Well, yeah,
Sure.
no,
Do you wanna-
good.
Yeah?
I'm good, yeah.
After the explosion, the wind blew a vast radioactive cloud west, where it rained its toxic contents on this area.
For obvious reasons, there hasn't been that much exploration in the really hot areas. Even decades later, the levels of contamination here are lethal if you stay too long. So we've only got a short time. Tim, I keep having to remind myself that this is an incredibly dangerous environment because the threat is so invisible. It just looks like a beautiful forest.
It really is one of the most radioactive places on the planet, actually.
Marianne has been joined by biologist Professor Tim Mousseau.
Okay, let's see what the radiation really is doing here. Whoa! And that's from almost a metre from the ground. 662, 686, 747. That is extraordinary. That is the highest I've seen since we've been in the zone.
But the forest hides an even more deadly threat. A major risk not just to life here, but across the planet.
Oh my goodness, Tim.
Major disaster potential.
Anthropologist Marianne O'Hara and biologist Rob Nelson are continuing to uncover the impact of long-term radiation exposure on both humans and wildlife in Chernobyl's exclusion zone. Now they're investigating the Red Forest, one of the hottest radioactive zones on Earth.
That's not normal. That's a really old tree that isn't really decaying.
Yeah, well, in fact, this is one of the trees that died during the time of the explosion. This is part of the so-called Red Forest. Red Forest because all the trees turned red after they died.
Wow.
And as you can see, 28 years later, plus it's almost intact. The wood's still all there. You kick it, it's hard.
Strangely, the dead trees are not decomposing. And on the ground are countless years' worth of leaves, all as crisp as when they first fell.
You can see that it's pretty thick. What's
really
going
is.
on here?
Yeah, that's years of accumulated matter.
The extreme radiation has wiped out even the organisms that cause decay.
So if you haven't got the little critters, the bacteria, the fungus that's breaking down the stuff on the forest floor, then effectively your whole ecosystem pyramid is going to fall apart, right?
We think it has major impacts, but the bigger threat, we think, stems from the fact that you've got all this fuel on the ground for a potential forest fire, and this fuel is different than regular fuel.
Oh my goodness, Tim. So it's not just a forest fire, it's a radioactive forest fire.
It's a radioactive forest fire.
That is terrifying, because if this sets on fire, all that radioactive material goes up into the air, spreads and falls on people's homes, schools, parks, farms. We've got another disaster on our hands.
Yeah, major disaster potential.
The radioactivity had accumulated within the leaves before they fell. But how much contamination would be released in a fire? There's only one way to find out. Marianne will have to collect some leaves and do a controlled burn experiment. Deeper in the Red Forest, Rob is searching for bugs. In this super hot zone, most insect populations were decimated. Some species that survived show deformities and mutations.
Since bugs don't live very long, they're already many generations out from the initial exposure, and that's why they're already showing these genetic changes and mutations.
Wow, look at that. Spiders are in here, that's for sure.
The spiders may look normal, but they're not. Just take a close look at their webs. Compared to healthy spiders, the radioactive ones of Chernobyl seem to be weaving erratic webs. Distorted. Deformed. In experiments, spiders that were given drugs have shown similar behavior. It's affecting their survival and could be a sign of genetic mutation. Back on the other side of the Red Forest, Marianne is gathering material for a controlled burn experiment.
But if I'm going to get down and collect those leaf samples, this is not enough. I need to be wearing one of these with a fresh filter. It's so easy to underestimate the threat, and it's only when you look at the monitors that you realise that the radiation hit that you're taking is enormous. And if you don't do it right, it could kill you.
We don't need too much to run the tests, because they're covered in the radioactive dust. They look innocent, but they're absolutely deadly.
Marianne is almost finished with her work in the Red Forest. She just has some final readings left to take. Coming up.
Ian. That's gone over.
Anthropologist Marianne Ohata is working in one of the highest radiation zones in Chernobyl, the Red Forest.
Oh my goodness. Ian. That's gone over.
Get back.
That's gone over.
Get back.
Guys, come away from that. Come away.
Everybody back. Come on.
What is that? Wait, it went up to 3,000 and then it just said over.
Right, clearly that's a shielded source under there.
Wow.
There's radioactive contamination. Your dose means you're still fine. You're safe.
Okay.
No need to panic. Let me see everybody else's.
So I was just scanning the moss in this sector of the Red Forest to see what the readings were, and saw this metalwork, I don't even know what it is, and it shot up the readings, 2,000, 3,000, then suddenly it just said, over. And Ian got us all back really quickly. The principle being that if you double your distance from the source, you quarter your dose, so we're all safe. We're all safe?
Yep.
Okay. And we need to inform the authorities that this source is here. Obviously, maybe they put the metal on top, whoever it was, to kind of shield some kind of ridiculously radioactive, ridiculously dangerous material that's under there.
Well done. Okay, one line.
Oh.
Still reeling from her near miss, Marianne wants to find out just how big a threat the leaves are. Using a tiny handful of the sample, a controlled burn test will show how much radioactivity will be released if they were to catch fire.
They're burning incredibly fast because they're so dry. Wow, look at that. The ash is highly contaminated, but so is the water that I've used to dampen the fire. Obviously, if this were a forest fire on a massive scale, all that ash would be up in the air, raining down on land much further away than the Red Forest, and all the water would be contaminated. That is scary.
Wow, you think you're just burning leaves, and then you remember, once again, that they are radioactive leaves covered in cesium-137, and if that gets into your internal organs, if it gets into your respiratory system or on your skin, you're in dire straits, right?
You are indeed.
Marianne and Rob have only 2 days left before their personal radiation levels are maxed out. They now face their ultimate challenge, the cooling pond right at the foot of reactor number 4.
All right, so right back there, that's reactor number 4. The sarcophagus is like a lot of people like to call it. They covered the whole thing up after it, blew up. And it's 30 years later, it's starting to degrade. So they're building another giant structure right there. It's huge. I'm not actually supposed to film all of it, so I let the band kind of be in the way. And I'm not supposed to film any of that stuff either. So I won't.
The cooling pond still contains lethal plutonium and uranium ejected from the reactor. There are tales of monster fish lurking in its nuclear depths.
This place is something. I don't know if it's just the mystery of water, but the cooling pond has always inspired strange stories. And I know logically, there are probably no monster fish, extreme mutants. But you can't help but wonder what the radioactivity has done to the creatures that live here.
Rob has been given special access to investigate these waters. His safety team is on high alert. This is no place for an unexpected dip.
So we're very close to the reactor. It's literally a stone's throw away there. I know there's a lot of radioactive particles here, uranium, plutonium, original fuel materials right here in the cooling pond.
Skeptical that anything could survive that, Rob's brought an underwater camera to investigate.
All right, let's see what we can find. Oh, wow. This is awesome.
Despite its lethal contents, the pond is surprisingly packed with life. And then, out of the depths, something bigger, much bigger. It looks like there could be monsters here after all. Marianne is determined to find out. She is attempting to test the DNA of the cooling pond's monster-sized fish. She's using an improvised but ingenious DNA collector pole.
I've never seen a fish that big. Wow, that is a monster.
The fish are over 7 feet long. They're catfish, Wells catfish. But are they mutant catfish?
Oh my goodness.
To analyze their DNA, Marianne needs to catch a tiny sample of the fish.
Sharks, they throw goats in. Catfish, you throw bread and berries in. Oh no! I didn't get him. That was the biggest fish I've ever seen in a river, and I managed to not stab him.
Jeremy Wade, move over. Marianne may not be a master angler, but she won't give up easy.
Ooh, the big one's coming. Right, you're my man. I'm gonna try and get you. I think I got him.
Finally, success.
I think I actually got him. I saw him squirm away. Okay, that's my sample. Well, as comic as that looked, it actually took days of permits for me to get permission to fish off the bridge. Finally, I've got my sample. It needs DNA testing, and then we can finally work out what's going on with those monster fish.
The amount of fish surviving and thriving in the cooling pond is astounding. Marianne meets with fish biologist Adelaide Lerabour, who is checking out a remarkable discovery that explains why.
You do your research in the most precarious playground ever.
Yes.
She's found that some fish are able to protect themselves against radiation damage by repairing their own DNA.
So you're saying over the past 30 or so years since the disaster happened, they've actually evolved to cope better?
Yes, I think so. They also have some DNA damage repair mechanisms, so that's maybe why they can cope with this radioactive environment.
The idea that animals can evolve to endure this extreme environment is incredible. And other research inside Chernobyl's exclusion zone has revealed another very definite ray of hope. Today, Rob is working with Professor Tim Mousseau to catch an incredibly special specimen.
Okay.
Now we just wait, huh?
Yeah, we just sit back, have a little coffee break, and wait for the birds to fly in.
All right.
Cool.
Many of the birds here show signs of severe radiation damage, cataracts, cancers, smaller brains. But a rare few don't.
Nice.
Oh, what do we got?
2 of them.
Excellent.
Oh, some great tits.
These are great tits. Pars my are.
See how this goes here. Now, oh goodness, ow.
Yeah, they got a little bite, don't they?
Yes, they do. Just bite my finger there.
The darker patch on the wing shows that this humble great tit is a world first, a species that is actually adapting to the radiation.
Yeah, we recently found that some of the species of birds actually are doing reasonably well in these areas of high contamination.
How does that work?
Blood tests show that these little birds have evolved to produce antioxidants that protect them against radiation damage.
So these different birds are adapting to the situation that they're in, then?
It really is natural selection in action, yeah.
That's fascinating. These birds are adapting to this nuclear environment at a rate that is really unbelievable for an animal of this complexity. And this is the first time it's been seen in the wild. Now, if we could understand the mechanism that allows this change to happen, then it would be a real game changer.
Coming up, Marianne meets some tiny creatures that just might hold the secret. One that could revolutionize the way we protect ourselves from radiation.
Wow, that is big.
They've seen the devastating effects of long-term radiation in Chernobyl, but anthropologist Marianne Ohata and biologist Rob Nelson have now found signs that nature is fighting back. Marianne is assisting with an experiment that could prove to be a lifesaver for humans.
I'm in one of the most contaminated areas of the whole of the exclusion zone. We're due west of reactor number 4, and this is where a lot of the fallout hit the Earth. It makes it a fantastic habitat to study.
Dr. Zbigniew Borodzinski is an evolutionary biologist, trapping and researching mice and voles that live in Chernobyl's hottest zones.
So inside each trap are some, this is sunflower seeds, apple, what's that, potato?
Potato.
They like potato?
They do.
That's sweet.
They believe they've uncovered a secret weapon against radiation damage.
Aha, this is it. So we're setting this trap under this feeding station. And the feeding station is the crux of the whole experiment, because these pellets here contain what these guys claim is the ultimate superfood. But Zbigniew, what actually is it?
The pellets contains antioxidant that's supposed to help to mitigate voles and mice oxidative stress caused by the radiation of this area.
So by eating these particles, these mice are actually protecting themselves from the impact of the radioactivity.
That's what we're trying to test here.
Wow, superfood indeed.
Before the feeding stations were set up, voles showed severe radiation sickness, including shrunken internal organs and smaller brains. But can a simple change in diet be enough to protect them?
Oh, hello. We go up. Oh, that is so cute. That's a vole, right?
It's a blind vole.
Gorgeous.
Astonishingly, this vole appears completely normal.
First impressions, it looks healthy.
Yeah, it looks very nice. It's 2 months old, maybe, around.
Measurements so far suggest that voles fed the special diet show significantly less radiation damage.
Then this vole will have a normal-sized brain, even though it's been born and lived in this very contaminated area.
Yes.
That's extraordinary. And if it works on a mouse or a vole, can it work on people?
It can work on any species, including ourselves.
Wow. That is big.
It's an astonishing discovery.
If something as simple as adding an ingredient to your diet can protect you from radiation by that great a degree, the implications are far-reaching. The research here could impact on the survivors of the Fukushima disaster, on cancer patients, on lots and lots of animal and human lives. This research is groundbreaking.
From discovering the damage done by radiation, even in the cold zones, to learning certain species can adapt and evolve to survive, anthropologist Marianne Ohata and biologist Rob Nelson have completed the most wide-ranging survey of the exclusion zone. Before they leave, there's news about the cooling pond catfish. Their DNA is different from regular catfish, but despite the mutation, the fish are able to survive and thrive, even in this extreme environment. The lethal damage done by man here is indisputable. But there are definite signs that where man is not present, nature is adapting in ways we never expected.
We thought that a nuclear disaster the size of Chernobyl would wipe life out for thousands of years. But nature has fought back. It's claimed its space in the exclusion zone. We've paid a high price, but there is hope.